going to do now, this is a demonstration that we set up, a live demonstration that Brophy set up, and this will be an interesting way to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Jeff Arnold from Brophy Marketing Services. He's our AR specialist. I don't know what the actual title is, but because it changes constantly. But basically, we're going to show an example that even stumped Danielle Dejean. So what we did is we are going back to what we feel is, and this is a very loose, this is our opinion, but what we feel is one of the original AR experiences. So I'm actually going to get this started with the iPad over here. And so what we have over here on the right side of the stage is a trigger image similar to what we saw before. And so with the iPad, you can clearly see that this is live. This is what's so great about AR, that we can work with our surroundings. And so what I'm going to do is, this is our trigger image over here. We happen to make it this big because we wanted it to be a big experience. So here we go. I point out.
Do you ever have one of those aha moments? Not the kind where you come up with that perfect idea. No, I mean the kind where the limitations of your canvas make you crumple to the floor. As you're now beginning to see, AR lets you push your message out in a whole new way. Well, it's time to break through the walls, because AR lets you literally think outside the box.
Mr. Jeff Arnold from Brophy Marketing Services.
So I was a little concerned that Take On Me is going to end up being my theme song from now on. What we're going to do today is I'm going to take you through a walkthrough of how we created that piece from concept to finish. And thankfully, Danielle did most of the work. I don't have to introduce what AR is or QR codes or show any other examples except for what you've seen. So, the concept, I think we started this just about 2 weeks ago, which is a pretty ambitious project for 2 weeks, but we wanted something that would be fun and humorous and cheesy and, all the things that I like to represent. So I believe that our concept started with Jeff and I just kind of talking like, what are we going to do here? And he mentioned something, just in dialogue, not necessarily being serious, but mostly a half joke, something about Take On Me, and I'm like, well, that would be perfect. We said it's kind of like the original AR experience. It's thinking outside of the box, they're trying to free themselves from their mundane black and white existence. And we said, yeah, we're going to go right ahead with that. And we didn't ask management. So step one really was to create a quickie script outline. You're not going to have to read the whole thing, but basically there was a longer version, but there are some limitations to AR as far as the time goes when you're dealing with transparent video. So we broke it up into 3 sections. So you've got just playing the original AHA video, and with our trigger image we lined it up in such a way that it's a seamless transition. So if you notice, the video sort of faded around it, and then he just came to life on the iPad. So after that, we just go through and kind of, not really storyboard it, but we just write out what I'm going to say, figure out if it's going to fit within our time frame, and the slight constraints that we have, and move on from there. So the next stage is we actually we treat it the way we treat any talent that comes into our doors. We have a green screen and we have an entire studio, video photography studio. So when talent comes in, and in this case I am not talent, we basically make up cue cards, and we try to adhere to certain rules. They have to be large enough that you can see them from far away. We post them in various locations, and we change the color, and there's plenty of spacing, because there's a lot to think about when you are trying to coordinate running around and jumping and trying to remember your lines. And just like we all learned from all the Star Wars movies, with a green screen, there's no live feedback. You don't really know where you are and how it's going to come out until it gets into post-production. So we did some practice runs with string laid out on the bottom and certain markers where I would have to know how to jump over things. Now ordinarily I would be behind the camera next to the cameraman and I would be helping to direct, but in this case I was just winging it, not unlike I'm doing right now. So I'm going to bring up some still images just so you can see kind of what our studio is all about. You might notice the Adobe product. We actually do primarily all of our work with Adobe products. All the video editing is done in Adobe After Effects. You know, anything in the Creative Suite is fair game for us. Here's just some different stills so you can see kind of what's going on. If you look right here, that's actually one spot where we posted one of the signs, because at the point where I step back in and then have to bang against the walls, I'm still speaking, and you know, I look over to my right, I need to see that dialogue, and I need little cues in there in parentheses saying, okay, now slam against this wall first, or you know, step back at this point. So I'll show you this from a few different angles. So our studio also has the foam acoustic paneling to hopefully eliminate more echoing. In this case, we had to do something a little different. Now we have a Hollywood production green screen. It's 15 by 20 feet, and it's made of this specialty foam, and it's multi-layers, and it actually feels a lot like, you know, the seat backs that really old people put over their car seats. It feels exactly like that, but the magical properties of it, the reason why it's Hollywood quality, is because the way it diffuses the light, it spreads the light out more evenly than, if you look at the bottom in front of it, there's just a cloth green screen. It's much harder to key somebody out. So primarily we use the really good one, but we've never had to send somebody running down a big long hallway before, so this was a new one for us, and a fun one. And there's our photographer, videographer, Vic, helping out here. So if you look here, you can actually see where my cue cards are in both spots. And I know it went by pretty quickly, but in the video where I jumped out, I was looking side to side. I was imagining all of you in your underwear. But, you know, it just kind of hopefully gave a little more of a warm feel instead of just staring directly at a camera the entire time. And if you look down here at the bottom, you can see the strings that I was talking about. This was actually from one of the rehearsals, and there were a lot of rehearsals. There were, I believe, at least 12 takes, because number one, I had to know when to jump over Morton, I believe is his name, from AHA. I had to jump over his body, and then I had to step over sort of the front windowsill. So I was actually breaking the boundaries. And that's something that surprisingly we didn't see in Danielle's presentation that I was aware of. Even the Robert Downey Jr. was set within the frame, so it was still a rectangular frame, but what we're actually doing here is I stepped forward outside of it. So it's actually like a transparent video, and they're making eye contact, and it's wonderfully engaging, and it adds 3 dimension because they are breaking outside of the rigid boundaries here. Their head will be popped up. The only example that I sort of saw like that would have been the Lego pieces. You know, those were actually popped up off of the box, and it's a wonderful thing to do. Vic filmed this one with a Canon 7D camera using a Sigma 10x20 lens. We use all kinds of different camera equipment and various lenses. It just depends on what the end product is going to be, and sometimes you have to match existing lensing. So we'll have to dial that in pretty closely. Of course with AR, because it is low resolution, everything is 72 DPI, things are going to be compressed and they're going to be softer. I know we're all used to high resolution print, and you know, everything's 300 DPI on up, but this is more like web type graphics. And when you do knock somebody out of a green screen, there tends to be sort of a halo, like a black halo, and that's just it's just part of the beast. When technology catches up, everything's going to look nicer and crisper. As I said, the video was taken into Adobe After Effects. Once we had gotten enough takes that we knew we were going to have maybe 3 of them that we could choose from, and even intermix little parts. Maybe the audio from one is better than another one. We have that flexibility. So when we took it into After Effects, there's something in there, and it's just stock. It's actually called Keylight, and it's a wonderful tool for letting you knock out green screen. There are a lot of other products that you can use and third-party plugins to add to it, but Keylight does a pretty nice job. So this is the original video. I don't have the audio on. Now at this point I've removed all the strings and all the things that I have to jump over, and it made it infinitely more difficult for me. And as you can see, it's transparent, so you can see it on different colors, different backgrounds. Now that's the glass shatter. That was another effect that we wanted something really, really dramatic and loud to let you know that we are in fact going to be breaking through that frame. But honestly, this was a pain. Okay, somebody got that. So after we had the original video in there and I knocked out the transparency, we also recorded the audio at the same time, obviously. But there's always noise with the audio unless you're in a small, very tight studio space with all the sound dampening. You always have to remove noise. So once again, Adobe Audition is our package of choice. It works wonderfully. It has noise removal features. I don't know how many people here do things like that. Are there people that do other multimedia type things? Just a few? Okay. So hopefully you guys have used that, and if you haven't, you should be. Adobe Audition is wonderful. So we split that, brought it into Audition. We did some fades in and out because not only do we have to do noise removal, but there's a little bit of difficulty with lowering audio levels in After Effects. It can be done, but it really just, even if you set it to the lowest level, it just wants to go to a very low level, and you'll still hear things in the background, specifically music. You know, you'll always hear that music playing. So that's when you really have to take it to a different program, make it silent for a few seconds, and then re-import it back into Adobe After Effects. So once we brought that back in, we resynced it with the video, and occasionally there's glitches when you get it up onto the server where the audio gets out of sync, and sometimes you have to compensate for that. In this case, everything went very smoothly, nothing to compensate. The frame where we held on where Morton was laying down there, We then brought into Photoshop and retouched him out, because knowing that I was going to be hopping back in and bouncing from wall to pretend like I was breaking through, I didn't want to have to then trip all over some giant guy. So it was just easiest to slowly have him fade out while I was hopefully distracting you while I was talking. After that, there was a quest to locate all the necessary footage. There was the footage of the glass, there was the footage of the weird flame-looking thing, and we adjusted that to make it kind of smoky and magical. And I can actually just go ahead and show you what that original footage looked like, not transparent. So it was a nice slow-motion flame with this cool magical stuff. And obviously it couldn't be rising the whole time, it had to stay in one place. So we had to actually animate the position accordingly to keep that from rising up to the ceiling. And then the original glass break without the transparency looked like that, and that's super impressive to me, so we had to use it. And there was a lot of also time adjustment, because these all start out in slow motion and very high frame rates. So we had to make it obviously fit the same speed as the rest of the video, which is just important to keep the consistency. At that point, once we had everything, we began just stacking the layers like you would do in Photoshop or any other software like that. Finding different sound effects that we could drop into place that might be kind of fun. So there's the original window break. I don't know if this is going to be loud or non-existent. Little things like my footfalls when I was running through the hallway. Without those little things, it would just feel foreign and unimpressive. So as I stated earlier, everything was split into 3 parts: the intro, my speech, and then what we're calling the outro. And the music fades between those sections. Originally, up until yesterday, as I said, this was about 2 weeks, so it was kind of a rush job. But up until yesterday, we were using the original Take On Me as the outro music for about 10 seconds. But that was not cheesy enough. So I found an accordion version played by a North Korean orchestra. It was going around YouTube, and I had to buy it because honestly nothing makes Take On Me better than an accordion version. At that point, we have the video the way that we want it, and the next step is to go into the actual AR development portion. Strictly till now has been video editing and just a little trickery. This program is called Creator, and it's made by Mateo. Mateo is one of the companies that Danielle had mentioned earlier in his speech. We are actually partnered with most of the larger AR companies, from Mateo / Janeo, Erasma, Total Immersion, sort of all the big boys on the block. And most of the things that we saw up there today were done using the technology that we are partnered with. So we have access to all of those resources. We are a production agency, so we will actually create the augmented reality, obviously, as well as act as an agency if the project is just immense and it's not something that we feel comfortable doing ourselves. So we have virtually unlimited resources backing us, which is nice. In this case, Mateo Creator is just a really quick and easy way to show you a demonstration of how to put some of the transparent video together. And also I have an example of how we can work with some sound really fast. But this is not by any means going to show you everything that went into this particular piece. So this is obviously it's the exact same trigger, where it's just me jumping out and none of the other effects. It's just to show you where there's, if people make mistakes, sometimes it's difficult to hold these things up, or, sometimes you pass your hand in front of it. Well, it's not going to interrupt that experience and make it unpleasant for the end user. And obviously, that's what this is all about, is making it pleasant for that end user to drive them places. Could be websites, could be, we have programming to make cell phone calls, text messages, pre-populated emails, or we can drive other videos from this. We can stack augmented reality videos on top of each other and string them all together to really sort of fool people into thinking it's one big long video, but in fact it's maybe 10 videos all strung together with interactive buttons. I know I just have a couple of minutes, but really fast, if we just want to recreate this, all we do is we pick a good trigger image, which is the most important thing out of all of this. A good trigger image has to have really good contrast. It doesn't have to be color. It actually can be black and white, but obviously color is way more interesting. But behind the scenes, what happens is it'll be converted to grayscale, and I would say black and white, but I know where we're at, so I can say grayscale. It breaks it up into a bunch of quadrants, and then it looks at those quadrants to see what shapes are inside of that. It puts it all together and uses the image recognition to say, hey, yeah, that is the image that I'm going to link some video to. And it's that simple. So in this case, I'm just going to get rid of those. I'm going to add a trigger image that obviously I know works well because we just presented with it. So I'm going to grab the AR board trigger. Up here, I'm going to go ahead and grab an inline video, which is the Jeff KO'd. Now, because it's a transparent video, it has to be an FLV. There's really no better video type at all that works. I think there's maybe one other that possibly could be used, but it's not really worth doing. So it was that simple. This is already working. I'm going to show you a quick preview, starting from scratch. And there it is. It was that fast and easy.
Did you ever have one of those aha moments?
I have. And thank you, Danielle, for saying aha moment in yours. That was unplanned. That was wonderful. And everybody who knew about this looked at me. So that's the bare bones of creating a very, very simple AR experience. There's a lot more to it than that, but just to give you just a quick overview of exactly what that was. If you like looking at code, there's all kinds of code involved, so it just depends on how you like to approach things, but I prefer something like Creator, where it's drag and drop, and hopefully I think we probably all do. So that's about it, really, as far as the behind the scenes. Thanks for having us out here. This is it's been really interesting, a lot of fun. And thanks for laughing at all the terrible jokes and jumping out with pipe wrench.
Can we see it again?
Absolutely, yeah.
The handouts will be out on the table on your way out. So you can take a sheet, download the app from the, what did Danielle call it? The old and dead QR code? We just did that to give you an example of what it looks like in case you haven't seen it enough. And so you can scan the code to get the app. Once you get the app, you launch it, point it at the trigger image, and away you go. And carry on. So yeah, you want to give out our sample site too?
Yep. At your leisure, you can go to Brophy, that's spelled BROPHY.com/AR. And that is not a mobile site, and that's intentional because it's filled with samples that what you would actually do is have that up on your screen and then point your device at it. So it's really just so you can have multiple experiences and see what kind of things that we have done, for different companies.
those aha moments? Not the kind where you come up with that perfect idea. No, I mean the kind where the limitations of your canvas make you crumple to the floor. As you're now beginning to see, AR lets you push your message out in a whole new way. Well, it's time to break through the walls because AR lets you literally think outside of the box.